Birch polypore are always a great late summer, early fall, and even early winter mushroom you can forage. And this species is quite the fascinating little polypore. We've been harvesting it for at least 5,000 years, as evidenced by the discovery of Otzi, the iceman, this mountaineering copper-aged ancestor that lived all these millennia ago, who was found to have Birch polypore and fomentarius, the horsehoof fungus, in his ancient foraging bag. And it's just a polypore that's full of beneficial antibacterial and antimicrobial compounds. It also converts the compound betulin found in birch to the much more bioavailable betulinic acid. And it is because this mushroom is so interesting that I wish to do a deep dive on this species, so stick around if you want to see a morphological characterization, some birch polypore microscopy, and some DNA barcoding of this species. So before we get into the morphological traits of this species, I want to be absolutely sure that we do in fact have ourselves some Birch polypore and not another similar looking species. It's very hard to confuse this for anything else, but we are going to do some DNA barcoding of a specimen we found in the wild and just confirm it. So to do this, we had to extract DNA, and to do that, we took a very small piece of our Birch polypore sample and put it in a 0.2 milliliter tube along with 30 microliters of 0.5 molar sodium hydroxide, and then we just macerated it a little bit with a pipette tip. We added 150 microliters of 1x tris buffer to this, and then heated it at 95 degrees C for 10 minutes in our thermocycler, and once that was done, we centrifuged it for 5 minutes at 10,000 RPM. While the centrifuge was working, we took 14 microliters of PCR master mix and added that to a separate tube with 0.6 microliters of our forward primer and 6 microliters of our reverse primer, along with 12 microliters of distilled water. And then we added 1 microliter of our extracted mushroom DNA solution to this mix. We then ran that through our thermocycler, which usually takes about 3 hours to complete. After this, we prepared an agarose gel with running buffer in our gel electrophoresis machine. We added a DNA ladder to one of the wells for reference. And then we added our sample next to that and ran the gel electrophoresis to make sure that our reaction did in fact target the internal spacer region, which would give us a band at around the 700 base pair region. And we did in fact see a band at that spot, and after that we simply sent it off for Sanger sequencing, and in just a few days we got back some sequence data in the form of a chromatogram that we used to run through the NCBI nucleotide blast function and see what it most closely matched with. And our results were in fact piptoporus betulinus on both the forward and reverse primer, exactly what we thought it would be, and with 100% query cover and percent identification. This is pretty much as good as it gets for identification. Given these results, I am 100% confident that what we have here is a Birch polypore. So given that, we can now discuss the morphological traits of this species. So Birch polypore grows exclusively on birch trees, and its cap is a brownish beige color, often with mottled splashes of a lighter white beige color at maturity. And when they're young, they appear almost dome-like when we find them on these birch trees. And they generally have a pure white pored underside when they are fresh. Now, as they start to age, they develop this dark brown coloring on their underside and can even start to grow small horn-like growths as well. The mature fruiting bodies flatten out to an oftentimes fan-shaped appearance, and it is not uncommon for them to be found on downed birch branches after a storm. A cross-section reveals a poroid hymenophore typical of the bracket fungi Polypore found in the fomitopsidaceae family, characterized by tubes in which the basidium and basidiospores are housed. I mounted a microscopy cross-section of this tube-like section, and it revealed, in my opinion, an aesthetically beautiful display of the holes that make up these tubes. So a cross-section of the entire mushroom revealed what you would expect, Birch Polypore hypha, among other things, but inspecting it a bit further, I discovered the presence of these dark brown, what appears to be septate hypha with distinct compartments. Now, I have a ton of things to learn about fungi, and I'm always learning new things about them, but that doesn't look quite right. I don't think that that belongs there. And this is when I throw on my speculation cap here, but I did some asking around, and I think that these may be something fascinating. I believe that these could be what are called dark septate endophytes, a poorly researched branch of ascomycete fungi that typically colonize the roots of plants, and I haven't typically heard of them colonizing mushroom fruiting bodies, but these, again, are poorly researched and poorly understood fungi, if this is in fact what they are. My speculation is that it is possible that it is these dark septate endophytes that perhaps give the dark coloring to the underside of the Birch Polypore as they age. Perhaps to test this, we can scrape off that top layer of the Birch Polypore and isolate it on agar to see what grows, and then DNA barcode that to determine exactly what it is. That's another video for another time. But I am not content with simply showing you the Birch Polypore and not really exploring the phylogeny of these species. So let's take a quick exploration of this mushroom, its genus, and its close relatives. Guys, so I wanted to show you a really cool website. This website is called OneZoom, and it allows you to kind of explore the phylogenetic relationships between different organisms. So obviously, if we're going to track down our Birch Polypore on this website, we're going to explore the relationships that it has to other closely related species of fungi. The first thing that we have to do is, of course, find it. Now, when I play around on this site, I always just try to narrow down our search, because you could easily spend hours and hours, kind of trudging through the different lineages of the eukaryotes, and it would take you maybe forever to find the correct fungi that you're looking for, or whatever organism it is that you're searching for. Obviously, we know that all fungi are eukaryotes, so we'll start with the eukaryotes. To narrow it down, I'm going to type in a search term here. And so we see that I typed in the word dikarya. The dikarya are essentially types of fungi that undergo a process in sexual reproduction. Keep in mind, many fungi can reproduce asexually and sexually as well, but in sexual reproduction of certain species or certain types of fungi, they go through a process called plasmogony, which is a process in which two hypha of the same species will, if they are the correct mating types for each other, exchange their nuclei in the process called plasmogamy. And when this happens, the two nuclei do not fuse. Essentially, the ploidy does not become 2N, for example. We don't have like a haploid 1N ploidy, and then these two hypha come together, and then all of a sudden, because there's two nuclei present, they become diploid. No, they become instead dikaryotic, in which the two nuclei do not fuse. Later on in the process of sexual reproduction, there's a process called karyogamy, in which the ploidy of the two nuclei then becomes 2N, but we could talk about that further perhaps in another video. So the types of fungi that undergo this dikaryotic phase in their reproduction are pretty much only the basidiomycetes and the ascomycetes. And we know that the Birch Polypore is a basidiomycete. So if we search for the dikarya, we can very much narrow down our search. So let's click on the dikarya and see what comes up. All right, so we've arrived at our dikarya, and we can see really an interesting kind of phylogenetic relationship we have here on the left. If I'll zoom in, If I can zoom in here, we have the ascomycetes. Okay. And on the right here, we have the basidiomycetes. Our Birch Polypore is a basidiomycete. So in searching for our Birch Polypore, we can see, for example, this picture of a polypore. We know we're searching for a polypore, so that kind of indicates to us that we're on the right track. So let's zoom in a little bit on these polypores and see what we get. All right, we have, we've arrived at the Agaricomycotina. That's a little bit familiar there. And we can keep going and going. And look, we have the witch's butter. So that's in the genus, I think it's Tremellus or something. Tremellomycetes, I'm sorry. And so, we can kind of just explore and see these different types of families and genera, Dacrymycetes. And of course, now we see, what's this? It says the mushroom-forming fungi right here. So we know we're still on the right track. And we can kind of explore here, but there's just so many different types of families and, genera that we could be here for a very, very long time searching through this. So what I'll go to is I know that this Birch Polypore is in the family Fomitopsidaceae, I believe. Let's take a look. Let's see if I'm right. Fomitopsidaceae, I believe. Yep, the bracket polypores. Fomitopsidaceae. Okay, so now within the mushroom-forming fungi, we have stumbled upon a family of bracket polypores, which is comprised of different genera. So, and this is all within the basidiomycetes. So if we look a little closer, we will see that, oh, would you look at this? Would you look at this? So I know off the top of my head that the Latin name for the Birch Polypore is Piptoporus betulinus. Okay, and here we have arrived, it seems, at the Piptoporus genus. Okay, and so if we look closer, indeed, we have found our Birch Polypore. Okay, so Wikipedia entry came out. That's another cool thing about this app is you can click on some of these and it'll just link you directly to the Wikipedia. But, for now, let's just kind of examine where we're situated. Well, we're in the Piptoporus genus. And of course, we have the Piptoporus betulinus. And once you start getting your mind around these Latin names and what they actually mean and what they're actually attempting to say, you can kind of get better ideas of why they're named the way that they are. And that helps you kind of understand a little bit more about the etymology of the phylogeny of these fascinating mushrooms. So anything in the Latin referring to the word betulinus is going to be, I believe the actual direct Latin translation of the word betulinus is of the birch. So whenever you see something, some kind of Latin name, doesn't need to be in the Piptoporus genus, but if it has betulinus, it could be a bug that eats, that is predatory on oak trees, right? And if the Latin name has the word betulinus, you'll know just by hearing that, even if you don't know anything about the bug, that it's probably found on oak trees or either exclusively or largely found on oak trees. If you look here on the right, you have the Piptoporus quercinus, and quercus is the genus for oak. So the white oak is Quercus alba, the red oak is Quercus rubra, etc. So we can pretty much surmise that this Piptoporus quercinus species is probably a mushroom in the Piptoporus genus that only is found on oak trees. So these are the kind of inferences that you can make that I find really pretty damn interesting, and I just think that, it's certainly worth taking some time. I'll spend hours on this site sometime just kind of exploring these relationships. So let's zoom out a little bit, and we already have the Piptoporus genus located, but maybe we can ask, hey, what's closely related to the Piptoporus genus? and see what appears. So let's zoom out a tiny bit. And would you look at that? That looks a lot like chicken of the woods. So if we zoom here, all right, we see that the Litiporus genus is here. And that's pretty fascinating. I think that very close on this family tree of fungi families and genera within the bracket, the Fomitopsidaceae family. Very close are these two genera, the Litiporus and the piptoporus. And so we can look here and see kind of your classic sulfur shelf, Litiporus cincinnatus. And then you can look here and see kind of the chickens, the species of chicken of the woods that we all know and love, and some exotic ones as well, the sulfur shelf. You have some ones I've never even heard of, Litiporus carabensis. Maybe that's only found in the Caribbean, Litiporus miniatus, etc. And you could also find the Litiporus cincinnatus here, I'm sure, in the Litiporus sulphurus as well, the sulfur shelf. So yeah, it's just a very cool way of exploring these phylogenetic relationships, and let's kind of explore even more here and see what we can find. Computer's going a little slow, but we have what looks like the Pycnoporus genus. Let's kind of zoom in up here. So these are obviously, here's the Piptoporus genus, here's the Litiporus genus, and these are kind of more distantly related, but we can still kind of examine them here. And then we have the fomitopsis down here. That I believe the horsehoof fungus, is found in that. And look, we have the Ischnoderma genus right here, and that, if you're familiar with the Ischnoderma genus, you'll know that a very interesting bioremediation mushroom, the late fall polypore, I believe it's called colloquially, but the actual name, I kind of have a glitch here, so let's just look up the Ischnoderma. Find that. Okay, we're back there. Sometimes it glitches out. And we found the Ischnoderma genus. The late fall polypore is sometimes colloquially referred to. I've heard it referred to, and what it is actually, the Latin name is Ischnoderma resinosum. I'm sure we can find that if I click on here. Ischnoderma resinosa, also colloquially referred to as the resinous polypore, which is a fascinating mushroom. Has all sorts of biochemical goodies and metabolites that it makes. It's also incredibly, it's got an incredible ability to bioremediate. So yeah, I just wanted to take you guys on this tour through the phylogeny of these organisms. And because I don't want to just do a PCR of this Birch Polypore and give you no kind of frame of reference for what that actually means and where it's situated in terms of, genus and all of that. So yeah, it's just a really cool website, and I hope you guys check it out. That's all for today. If you guys like this kind of content, please subscribe and share this, and there's plenty more to come.